I'm going to start with the first two slides this evening. One is addressed to Chapter 15, which are 504 service agreements. And I wanted to let the families know that all annual 504 meetings will be held on their annual dates. All students with 504 service agreements will continue to receive their services, whether we are virtual or brick and mortar. So they receive their services and those accommodations wherever they're going to be receiving their instruction. All case managers, or for 504 purposes, our counselors, will be reviewing, meeting, and assessing their students on their caseload that have 504s those first few weeks of school, talking about how they're acclimating to an online instruction, what supports they might need to support them having better access to that. And that will happen automatically beginning on the first day of school for the first 2 weeks. And then if you feel that as a parent or your child feels that they need to address something in that 504, absolutely we can begin addressing those with 504 service agreement meetings. We're hoping that we can pause and wait those first 3 weeks till all of the counselors have met all of their children. However, if any parent believes that services need to be changed or addressed or revised, you are able to pick up the phone, call your 504 case manager, and request a meeting based on a concern. That is always the parent's option. Amy, do you want to go through and see if any questions can pop up after that slide?
Yeah.
I can read the question. Just you read.
The first one, you answered the assessment piece. How will placements occur without PSSA data from last year?
Placements are, I guess, placements for 504s. Students that are in 504 placements are all general education placements, so their placement would not be affected by PSSA or Keystone data. Those services are afforded to them based on another model, so that would not be a part of the placement decision right now, especially since we don't have that data, but we don't rely heavily on the 504s, whether or not that indicates service is necessary or not. Okay.
My son's pediatrician, along with his speech therapist at CHOP, are recommending that he be evaluated this year at school for speech and language therapy. How will evaluations occur? Virtually.
So, there we go. We will continue the initial evaluation process. It will look different from the fall. A valid initial evaluation occurs live and in person. So our psychologists are preparing precautionary measures to have appointment sessions based on permissions to evaluate, and the children will be invited in if parents are comfortable with bringing them in, and the assessments will be done with all of the guidelines and protectionary measure that's necessary for initial evaluations and testing. If a parent is not comfortable having their child assessed in person, we can pause and have that assessment done when children are allowed back on site or a parent feels more comfortable with that session. Mike, do you want to go to the next slide? Chapter 16, which is gifted support services, all annual GIEP meetings will be held on their annual dates. Gifted support services will occur for anyone who carries a GIEP, whether it's virtual or brick and mortar. Elementary students, whether we are virtual or brick and mortar, will receive information from the gifted support teacher on the days and the times that their seminar session will be held, and they will have a link and link in as they did before. In the middle school will run on a schedule. So if they were in brick and mortar and they had a gifted class at 4th period, then that is the time and the link in their schedule when they will receive their services on those days. And high school students that have GIEPs, they will continue to have their IEP meetings on time, and there will be no support changes at the high school for those children. Again, if you feel that there's something that needs to change for your child in their gifted IEP, you can reach out to the case managers or to the building principal and request a meeting. Any gifted questions, Ms. Bell, we can answer? Okay. We can move on to, and now we're going to move, oh, go ahead.
Will these gifted students miss their instruction from the teacher while they are meeting with the gifted support teacher?
So it is a little different at the high school and middle school level. It's scheduled as a period, so it doesn't impact anything else that occurs during their day. At the elementary level, it will occur as before. So on-site gifted support services happen, the children go to the teacher and the teacher delivers the service, and they do miss instruction on those days. And they're supported with making up that instruction or that work that's missed. That will happen in the same way now. So yes, there will be a time in the day that gifted support services will occur. We hope that they will not occur during the ELA or math instructional blocks. But once Ms. Kravitz meets with the building principals and sees the schedule, she'll be able to plan accordingly so it does not impact any significant instruction. And we will move into the special education components of this. And again, they are more broad and less student specific. And if you have very specific student questions, please feel free. At the end of this PowerPoint is Mr. McCormick's, Ms. Bell's, and my contact and email address. Don't hesitate to email us or call us, and we can get back to you if they are very specific questions. And hopefully tonight we can answer some of the more broader questions or what this might look like in a virtual world.
Ms. McClure, if I could ask you to just repeat the questions from Ms. Bell. Sometimes there's a little bit of feedback. Folks can hear those questions. And I'm also happy to also address one of the questions where a parent was mentioning a concern about not being able to immediately put work back for their child because maybe their child's going to be with a elderly grandparent or of such sort. The question is, will they have the entire day to log in? So the work will not be all asynchronous or in terms of turning it in. And we're hoping, expecting that kids will log in. Certainly at the secondary level, we want them to log in. We're going to design our lessons so that it doesn't require a lot of support and hand-holding from people behind the scenes on the other side of the computer. In terms of turning in work, we recognize that some parents have to go off the work and then come in and maybe go over the material with their kids at night. We totally understand that. Name of the game is going to be flexibility for the course of the start of the school year in this virtual circumstances. Even if we were hybrid, it's going to be flexibility. That's the message that I've been conveying to our principals. We have to work with parents. We have to partner with parents in unique circumstances. So as long as there's continued communication with the teachers, with the principals, telling us the circumstances that folks are trying to work through in terms of the limitations that you might have with the caregivers who are with your child while you're at work, just make the special education teachers aware of those limitations, and we will adjust, the expectations to be fair about the process. Those kind of things I feel like we can work with as long as we have communication. What we don't want to see as a district is just a lack of communication from parents or a lack of students logging in at all or making any efforts. A for effort is really the big thing for the start of the school year. Just showing us that people are trying, and then we're going to meet you halfway in that regard. Okay, back to you, Regina.
Thank you. Hopefully some of the questions I quickly did see pop up about schedules and things will be answered as we're moving forward. But that is what the special education teachers, principals, and general education teachers are actually feverishly doing right now, is creating those schedules so that parents can understand when their services are going to be provided, when and how we can accommodate not pulling them out of general instruction. But the special education teachers are going to provide live instruction. So if you are working towards a goal area, the instruction that supports that goal area is going to be live and virtual. If you're not able to accommodate that live virtual, then you'll call us and we will figure out how we can deliver that service. I know that some parents work during the day and the kids may not have access or always be able to log in at that time of that instruction. And again, as Dr. Steinhoff said, we're trying to work with individual families to do the best that we can to accommodate as many of the parents as we can. Our special education teachers will also provide instruction in an asynchronous model, which is not live. This could take the form of off-camera work, completing their works. We don't want any child to be on the computer for Zooming 8 hours a day. We know that's fatigue. So they're able to have work provided for them, off-camera work, in a chat room, drill and practice, and paraprofessional support, if it's necessary and it's contained in their IEP, will be delivered to them, however that service looks. So we're building our schedules and our supports for a large majority of our students as though they were in school, and they will have their regular schedule, and our special education services and supports will overlay on top of those, ensuring that we do the very best not to pull them out of the general education instruction by the staff members that know that content the best, and that's K to 12. Special education teachers will follow the student's schedule, whether receiving instruction in general education or special education, and provide days and times of synchronous and asynchronous work. But the targeted skill deficits on those IEP goals, that instruction will be live. It will not be a pre-recorded lesson and posted work that they have to watch. They're going to see their teacher just like I'm seeing you right now. Next slide. Special education, what will my child's day look like? Fully virtual or hybrid? They're going to have a traditional school schedule as they would if they were brick and mortar. In a specialized class, those teachers in specialized classes will also have a schedule for them, posted for them before the first day of school. And we're going to be tweaking and building that at the elementary level for the specialized classes, really elementary, middle, and high school, so that we can accommodate those varying needs because they need more individual instruction. But for the most part, our teachers will be pulling them as they would as if they were in brick and mortar. Special education instruction, it's going to be weaved in throughout the day, hoping that it can happen outside of the literacy and math blocks. If you are in a more self-contained specialized class, there will be a much more specialized schedule that will provide more intense one-on-one, more intense paraprofessional drill and practice, and that will dictate by your individual IEPs. And special education teachers will spend about the first 2 to 3 weeks working with each of the children on their caseload, assessing and reassessing and establishing what is known as a baseline, where they are currently right now. What is the skill deficits that we have on their IEP goals? Did we lose some ground in the spring? If you were in ESY, did we maintain where we were? Did we make progress, so that we know where to begin instruction on those IEP goals? It will be slightly different for children in specialized classes, as those teachers will be assessing and instructing almost in a rotational method so that they can accomplish all they have to do. They will have support of related service providers and paraprofessionals to help them get all that baseline work done. Amy, if you want to ask a couple of questions, see if we can answer something, I'll mute and then unmute to answer.
Let me go up to, how are we going to support kids basically at home if they need some one-on-one assistance? And and have had, like, if they're ADHD and has a difficult time being focused, how are we going to support that?
And the accommodations in the IEP that support a child who may be inattentive and tend to maybe fade in and out of instruction. If there is paraprofessional support, that paraprofessional can attend and watch the live instruction, and then maybe provide an opportunity later on with a link that then works one-on-one with the child to complete the task, revisit the material, and make sure that they accessed what was just taught, or they're having that additional drill and practice to practice a skill or pre-teach. Those schedules for the paraprofessionals are also developed by the case managers themselves that know the kids the best. Amy, did you want to pop another question up?
I'm looking for one. I have a child with a hearing loss. Will an FM system be available? That's individually, we can address that, but
if your child has an FM system and they also receive hearing support from a member of our team or a member of a team that we bring on for hearing support, we plan to work with them and figure out what we need to do. If they use an FM system, it may be just easier to make sure that they have headsets to use, which would be a similar to the FM system. But we'll work with the hearing professionals and the parents and the kids to make sure that if that's a part of their IEP and a part of their day, that we mimic that in some way.
One other one, as a child that is moving into middle school for the first time, how is my child going to be evaluated to see what goals they will have for this year?
If they have a current IEP and they're moving to the middle school, they currently have goals. And we're going to assess where they all are on those goals and continue to provide instruction towards the progress and attainment of those goals, and continue to work on skill gaps and provide supports for them. So if they're moving to the middle school, they do have goals in a current IEP, a GIEP, or a 504 that we will continue to address and work on.
Will there be brain breaks during the day?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We know that, especially at the elementary level, that a child could never be able to do 6 hours of instruction. So it is weaved into the times that they need a break. And also, if Dr. Steinhoff can maybe jump in as well, the general education programming is not going to be designed K-12 for a student to be sitting on a Zoom meeting for the whole 42 minutes of a middle school or a high school class, or the entire block of ELA and math. There's going to be initial targeted instruction on the objective of the day that the teacher will be teaching, and then they might work in small groups, or they might log off and finish their work and then send it in when they're completed. But I do not believe any of the lessons, special education or general education, are being built for long blocks of time to have a teacher teaching and a student listening. Is that correct, Dr. Steinhoff?
That's absolutely correct. With regards to our schedules, I keep telling administrators we have to try to take this kind of Goldilocks approach. Not too hot, not too cool, just right. And with respect to the amount of time on the computer, we had vastly different feedback from parents. So we heard from a lot of parents who said, my child did not get enough live synchronous instruction from the teacher, like learning on their own or learning asynchronously at different times without a schedule. That is not good for my child. We also heard from other parents who said the complete opposite, right? They said, that they absolutely, had to have breaks, be able to learn at different times. They couldn't stay focused on the computer long enough. And that's not surprising, right? Because we have different kinds of learners. So we have to take that feedback and also balance that against the requirements of the state this year, which are that you have a certain amount of days of instruction, that you have a certain amount of hours of instruction, and also make sure that our kids don't fall behind. So on paper, we have schedules that pretty much, they come close to matching what a regular day will look like so that we can meet those requirements. But we understand, and the teachers are going to be empowered, particularly at the secondary level, when the lesson is done and they can release the students to do work on their own. So like a math lesson where a teacher might give 15 minutes, 20 minutes of direct instruction. Are there any more questions? Does everybody understand the assignment? They can release the class at that time and let the kids work on their own. So we're trying to have something that will work, for all parties. At the elementary level, we know the parents need a break too, right? So we understand that, and we'll start with a whole group meeting. And then at times the teacher will say, okay, I'm going to work with this small group of 3 kids, and the other group can work on their own or take that break or just be a kid, and just, relax and run around on a nice day, go in the backyard, do what they need to do. There's going to be a lot of flexibility. We're just trying to find, again, a just right mix. We're also looking at having, last year, the Wellness Wednesdays were really important to parents, where we dialed back the assignments and we dialed back the amount of homework and we dialed back the amount of time online and let kids work on their own on special projects. And we're looking at adding something like that back into the schedule as well, so everybody has a break. My goodness, like, this is just too much. So we definitely are, to wrap this up in terms of this question, we're cognizant of the fact that too much time on the screen can be a problem, and too little time in front of direct instruction is also a problem. And we're going to try to find a happy medium to that point. Parents ask a lot of great questions, and some we still don't have answers to. So some parents will ask questions about, how do you meet this need when we're not there, or need certain types of assistive technology that we haven't had to use before. And we're going to have to continue to work with parents and go down this path together and collaborate and try different things, again, to support one another, recognizing it's not going to be perfect, it's not going to be ideal. Back to you, Regina.
I was able to just quickly see one of the questions that popped up, and it's an important topic for me because it's social emotional learning, or being able to collaborate for children who need friendship breaks or friendship groups, and how are we going to provide that in a virtual world? That can be done in many different ways. Guidance counselors hold social skills groups virtually. We can hold collaborative groupings socially. Lunch bunch is often done by teachers. Just having lunch in a virtual screen, chit-chatting and casually talking about topics that are not scripted. Lunch bunches for scripted reasons can happen. That piece of social emotional learning is going to be weaved into our day. And I'm actually going to let Mr. McCormick speak for a second, because he is helping us spearhead our social emotional learning and what that's going to look like for the kids, especially those who need to increase that peer interaction or are shy learners.
Thanks, Regina. So the Penn-Delco School District recognizes that these are trying times for many of our families and students, which is why we assembled a team of staff here at Penn-Delco, including teachers, psychologists, and administrators, to address social emotional learning, especially over the first couple of weeks of school, where teachers will be provided with pre-made lessons addressing some of the concepts you would normally see in social emotional learning, such as mindfulness, executive functioning, organization, self-awareness, and other areas that we can help students develop and sort of help them get through these uncertain times. So that will be a process that will be in place for all of our students, regardless of special education or general education. And it's something we'll continue to work towards as a district, hopefully long after COVID.
Thank you. We are aware that this is completely new for all of our children, and we want to figure out how to seamlessly bring them back into instruction that they haven't had access to in this way, and a whole new style of learning. And it's going to be new for everyone. If you know We're going to take lots of cues from you. If you know your child learns better one way or needs some social emotional support or some lunch bunches or some of that relaxed time just with their friends as though that they would have in school, it's good to let our teachers, general ed, special ed, and building principals know so that we can figure out how to build some of that in there. We don't want them to just grind out academic work all day long, because that's not what it looks like in school. School is part of a social arena. It's where they learn and grow socially, and we want that to continue. And that's one of the things that we have to get better at, is making sure that we can provide those opportunities for those kids in whatever form works best for them. Hit the next slide. Reestablishing baseline. So this is a task that has been brought to the forefront by really PDE and the Bureau of Special Education. So the data and all data that is going to need to be utilized and determined by case managers, and it needs to be adjusted, because we need to find out if your children need to recoup any lost skills that are in an IEP goal. So we are required to kind of reassess them their first few weeks, and then report back to you, parents, on where that recoupment gap is, if there is one, if there isn't one. So once the students have been assessed, that's when we will send out those solidified schedules of our students that receive most of their instruction in special ed. When am I going to see your child for their intervention? But they're going to be seeing the children on and off every day, trying to get that reassessment done and what that looks like. And then those set schedules will be created so that you know that if your case manager is Miss S and you're going to be doing some decoding work and it happens 3 days a week, you know what 3 days it's going to happen and what times it's going to happen. And we'll be building those schedules as we do some reassessment. This could be in the form of individual grouping or small group intervention time, depending on what the area, what the goal, and what the need is, and the child's needs. Go ahead, next, Mike.
Mrs. McClure?
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that thought in terms of how OT and PT and those will be delivered?
Yes. Right now, all of our related services will occur in Zoom fashion, similar to how they occurred in the fall. So our related service clinicians are a little bit ahead of the game in how to do a live virtual session, because they've been doing it since the second week we've been in a virtual model. And they will continue. And again, they will be assessing the children and they will be establishing the times that they're going to see them and work with them. Some students receive a larger amount of related services, and some students might have only one session once a week, small group or individual. And as those baseline 2 weeks of data collection appear, they will be looking at individual needs and group needs and creating their schedules based on that. Your IEP might say right now the child has an individual speech session, or it could be a group speech session. And the clinicians will be getting those schedules set up during that first 2 to 3 week period of time. Also knowing and assessing whether or not they have to recoup some of the skills that may have been lost during that initial closure period. Not all students are going to need a recoupment plan, but we plan to let you know once that baseline assessment is done whether your child has regressed any, needs a recoupment plan, and what that's going to look like. That process of recoupment must be finished sometime by late November and early December. And further information regarding that recoupment process will come out in individual meetings and be sent to you in written form via those case managers and teachers. If in November you haven't recouped everything we thought you needed to recoup, then we will be formally reopening that IEP and discussing adding additional services to make sure that you do recoup that plan. And that specialized plan, if we can't recoup where you are by November, is known as a COVID Compensatory Service Plan, a CCS plan. That plan, if we gave you recoupment and it didn't yield the progress we wanted, then you will also know that, and there'll be a formal IEP meeting, and that formal recoupment CCS plan will be added into your IEP, and we'll have a formal meeting and add that in. The district will notify everybody what that looks like by late November to early December, because that's kind of what the state says we're required to do right now. So we're working double time to make sure that we can also meet the timelines that the state has given us. They have allowed for a little bit of flexibility in the tentative timeline dates, but not much. So you will see our teachers working feverishly to get instruction done, assessments done, and then to begin instruction for your children with IEPs or GIEPs. Amy, do you have any questions you think we should go through?
I think we're okay for now.
Mike, go ahead and hit the next slide. IEP meeting requests. All annual IEP meetings will be held on their annual dates. That's sort of non-negotiable. They're not allowed to be late. And the teachers know I'm a little fanatical about meeting your dates and times, because that's what we need to be doing. This year, because of the health and safety plan, all IEP meetings, RR meetings, and initial evaluation meetings, they'll be held virtually. All of the participants will there, but they will be Zoom meetings similar to this. We're not going to be bringing parents in for meetings. They'll be virtual. A parent can also opt to have a no meeting model if they are comfortable with everything that's happening and any changes that are happening. That's also a very swift process by updating an IEP that in something you agree to, and then sending home a parent a NORAD. But that's how we're going to move forward. We're asking parents if they could hold off respectfully for those first 2 to 3 weeks in asking for IEP meetings if they're not annual meetings, so that our teachers have the ability and the time to meet the children, work with the children, and systematically ease them back into some type of non-traditional learning, because that's what this is. This is non-traditional learning. And there's an assessment period that has to happen, and then a schedule that has to be built. However, if there is a situation that you feel as a parent cannot wait, you can email the special education teacher and request a meeting. And also you can request a meeting through my office. If there just is not time in the day, we will figure out how to have a meeting if it's necessary. But we're hoping that some of those meetings, if they're not annuals, could be postponed for those first 3 weeks to let those teachers really get to know the kids and assess them. I'm not going to go through this chart because I'm going to post this, but these are 7 steps and a general timeline about what the special education teachers and clinicians are required to do. There are 7 steps. It kind of outlines each steps, and you will see that some things need to get done within the first 2 to 3 weeks. They have things that are required to get done by late November, early December, and then things that have to be done before March. So those, just to give you a time to be able to read that with a little more attention to that, the way that we're going to be looking at moving through this period of time. I will also say, if your child had a reevaluation or was scheduled to be evaluated, and we completed that evaluation or reevaluation without all of the required assessments, we will be reissuing the permissions to evaluate or reevaluate over the course of the first 6 weeks of school, making sure that initial evaluation requests go out, reevaluation permissions go out for assessments that can only be done by clinicians, psychologists, OT, PT, speech. And the third phase would be evaluations that need still maybe academic achievements, some observational data, functional behavioral assessment data, that they go out in the third phase. We have a list and we know who had a reevaluation, who had a fully valid evaluation, and who ended up with parts of an evaluation and a full records review. So we know who you are, and we will be getting those out to you in a phased model. Amy, any questions?
Will the PowerPoint be shared at the after it's the completion of the webinar?
Absolutely. We plan to post this webinar. Ms. Pomerini, I call her our tech guru and our public relations guru. She will make sure that this PowerPoint and the question and answers, when they're all completed, are posted in numerous spots for parents to find.
One other question, students who participate in, for instance, the DCIU options program or other programs at the IU, how will that occur?
Well, they will occur based on whatever the DCIU program model is. Right now, they are also opening virtual. They have a phased plan to bring students in. So their services and supports will happen based on the services that they have. And in some level, our transportation genius will figure out how to get them to and from their DCIU services. I see one question. I will share with all of the families today that at the current time, the district, the LEA, is not authorizing any staff members to enter the home. That is just not something that we are able to do. If you require home supports, we will help you access those agencies and support services if they are required in the home. That is just one service that we cannot provide. And I'll let Amy just continue to ask some questions that seem important and relevant, and we'll continue to take a few questions for a few more minutes, and then I'll be able to end the evening knowing that parents, you can continue to email the special education department for any questions that you continue to have, especially if they're really specific to your child's individual needs.
General question, how you handle obtaining signatures from the team for special education paperwork?
So right now, our system, which is known as IEP Writer, you may, if you've had a meeting, get a e-signature request for your participation. I have been informed by IEP Writer that they are adding e-signatures to NOREPs and evaluation documents. And as soon as that is available, I will let every parent know. Right now, if you're sent a NOREP or a document that needs to be signed, and you just want us to know you're in agreement, you send us back an email that says, yes, I am in agreement, or no, I'm not. And we take that email and we staple it to the document so that we accept that right now as a signature document, an agreement or disagreement.
One question was about, will you be, are you looking for regression in reassessment, or will you also be taking into account gains?
Both, absolutely. We have related service providers that have worked individually with students as well as teachers, and we have seen growth, and we have seen some level of mastery on some goals. That will also be taken into effect. We don't want to keep working on a goal that's been mastered. We want to replace that with a continuation of movement for them. So we will be taking both into consideration.
Will the process for compensatory service plan apply to a child who has a 504?
The 504 is not about regression or recoupment in an academic area. 504 is for a general education student. The accommodations level the playing field. So if you feel that your child currently has a 504 and there has been significant academic regression in a skill or an area, you're going to give me a call and I'm going to walk you through what we need to do with that.
The only other one was how, I'm looking at several questions that have to do with how to support kids who have difficulty being on Zoom or need the supports to get their work done.
So our case managers are going to be working with all of our children. So there is also time in the day for the case managers to have office hours, to have small group support sessions, because as you know, they won't be instructing for, a full 42 minutes or a full class period. There will be time for them to have individual small groups. I know one teacher at the high school sent out a link a few times a week, or usually every day, that said to the students on her caseload, here's a link. Anybody can join us. I'm helping students work on such and such assignment. I'm here to answer questions. That will still be available for students. So if your student needs help with work completion or executive functioning or organizing materials, we're going to do our best to figure out how to meet and fill that need.
How will they know their case manager, and especially if they're transitioning to a new school? I'd answered that they will be in touch with them, but do you want to elaborate on that?
Yep. When I see the students for the first, or when I see the staff for the first time, which is around September 1st, I also have professional development for them, and also what this looks like for them, as they're very nervous about this. Every case manager has access to a caseload of students that they will have. You as a parent will get an email or a letter before September 8th, and it's going to say, hello, my name is, I will be your child's case manager. The best way to contact me is, here's an email, here's an extension for my phone. I will tell you that the best way to reach a case manager is an email. I know that there will be a lot of parent emails in the beginning, but I would hope that most of our emails and questions would have about a 48-hour turnaround. But if someone doesn't get back to you right away, I'm going to hope that you can email again or email myself and one of the supervisors so that we can get your need addressed as quickly as possible.
One other one, my child's IEP states that instructions and tests will be read to him. How will this work?
In small group sessions, if that's an accommodation in that IEP, that's a more common occurrence. So those case managers will get together, and that general education test might be given on a given day. It may be that a Zoom link is sent to those students that need the questions read to them, and that test is taken with the special education or the paraprofessional that's reading those questions and allowing those children to get clarification on a question so that they answer correctly.
Regina, I also saw a question come through. A parent was asking what would happen to their child who was scheduled to undergo educational testing after March 13th. So they were scheduled to have assessments done during that quarantine period last spring.
So if it was an initial, so your child never had services before, you're going to get a new permission to evaluate, and the timeline's just going to begin again. If it's a reevaluation and things are missing, your case managers or building psychologists are also going to get information to you about when those assessments will be done. And we're going to move through them as best we can, meeting the timelines that are required.
I also saw a question came in about students with IEPs coming into the school during the school closure period based on some guidance from the Chester County Health Department. So I did have the opportunity, along with other superintendents today, to speak with their executive director today. And in the Chester County Health Department guidance, there is indication that students with IEPs may need to come back to school sooner than the October 9th date. And that somewhat sounds like it conflicts. And the point they made is they wanted to provide that flexibility for school district providers who may have some requirements, some legal requirements to service maybe one or two students under certain circumstances. But she made a point to mention to all of us that, you know, these are health issue guidance. This is guidance based on a virus, and the mitigation issues that are part of virus control don't change just because we have a student with an IEP. So they were not meaning to suggest in that document that anybody who has an IEP could come back to school, and we wouldn't have those same issues that are causing them to say, we really don't think any students really should be back to school right now. That health issue still exists. So again, it was a health department trying to acknowledge that there are circumstances where there are some students with real extreme complex needs, particularly in placements outside of our typical K-12 school districts. They did not mean to say that, you know, school districts probably should open up for students with IEPs. What it does tell us, though, is that when it is time for us to reopen, we're going to give real good consideration to try to scaffold our reentry plan. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the first day we get a green light and can bring kids back into school, that we have to bring back 3,423. You know, we do have priorities. And our learners who just don't learn as well online, but learn better in person, certainly would be part of that priority group, as would our K-2 group, for instance, you know, the developmentally appropriate ages where we really have to have them learning in place. They would be our priority groups. I see a question too. My son has an incoming 9th grader, had his IEP not completed. However, there was a meeting. Will that get picked up sooner than the other ones that are just starting? So I guess one that already began for a student who's going into high school next year.
If there was an IEP meeting, then they would have completed a document, and even if it was new, it will be up and running. If there was a meeting because there was an evaluation completed, but we didn't get an IEP written, if you can email me, and I will make sure that everyone is aware that that's one of those IEPs that needs to be written quite swiftly.
There's one about, will the child study team be available for children?
Absolutely, the child study team will be available for children. What I think Dr. Steinhoff and the curriculum department are working on right now is bringing back kids, all kids, general ed and special ed, making sure that we look at instruction that was provided and where all kids need to be. Because we don't want to put someone through a special education evaluation just because of COVID, but we want to make sure that we're assessing our children for the special education needs. If your child was slipped or had some difficulty and a general education and needs some support, he does not need an evaluation to have that, and our child study team will be working with and through children who need some extra support to get them back on track, just as they did before. I did see one question earlier that talks about paraprofessionals at a very high level, which are known as significant one-to-ones or PCAs. All of our paraprofessionals currently will be instructing students. They'll be given schedules. And if you have a significant amount of PCA support or one-on-one support, that service is provided to you. And what that looks like in a virtual world, I think we're all going to be working together. That person may be zooming in or zooming out significant amount of times. Links can remain open for children to access support from a PCA or a one-on-one as it's discussed in that IEP. There might have to be a little tweak and a little collaboration about how often or what that's going to look like or how that's going to look as the school year opens. And we will work our way through that.
Is there an OT for panel?
There is an OT for every building. I just received a list from our service provider, wonderful service provider, Pediatric Therapeutic Services, and our buildings will be fully staffed with occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech and language pathologists, as well as our vision and hearing supports coming from the DCIU. They are all available and up and running.
Any others, Mike, Dr. Steinhoff?
No, I just see a question, concern about, kids falling behind in the first 2 to 3 weeks. Making sure that, some students can kind of get up to speed on this type of learning platform and learning in a virtual model, and then perhaps falling behind the others. What I'll tell you is we're going to be encouraging our staff, particularly for the first week, really not to be spending time driving home too much content instruction, but getting to know kids and putting together activities that will enable students to start to feel comfortable with this kind of interaction. So in terms of getting out of the gate and then all of a sudden, finding that, my gosh, my child's already behind, it's only 2 weeks. I wouldn't get too concerned, because again, we're going to really be asking staff to focus just on the process of learning online. Because even once we switch to hybrid, you're still going to have kids learning online. We're care more right now about the process of learning than what you're learning. Again, getting kids comfortable, getting them to understand, the expectations. I have to tell you, I was really impressed with what we did with some ESY that occurred online this summer. I was really impressed last year watching first grade classes in Google Meet. And I realized, wow, I've never seen a group of first graders all quiet at one time. There's something about seeing a person talk in a box, and they didn't have to mute themselves. They just kind of realized, now's not my time to talk. Now is my time to listen. So in general, another piece that I would just share with parents is, I hear a lot of parents and I read a lot of articles where folks say we're concerned about kids falling behind. And I'd like to see more articles that have talked about what kids have gained in this process. Because the skills that companies want, the skills that colleges tell us they need to see in kids, are the skills that got developed in the last 6 months. Collaboration, critical thinking skills. Again, first graders doing a Google Meet, right? Skyping in with the teacher and following those directions. Collaborating online. At the high school level, students learning how to share documents digitally, and people edit it and submit it collectively. So the things that we're trying to push for, creativity, character building, that certainly comes through with the grit that kids have to show in this process. Communication, collaboration, those things are the skills that colleges and careers tell us we need to see more of from kids. And that's exactly what they'll be developing in an online learning scenario. I always felt a good goal for anyone coming out of Sun Valley would be to have some experience with online learning. Well, gosh, now that's not an elective. Every child now will have experience with online learning before they go off to college and maybe get assigned a class to learn online. So this is the new norm. And, I would say, I know we're starting to wrap this up here again. We acknowledge, like I tell teachers all the time, all you can do is all you can do. Just make sure you did all you can do. And for parents who feel like, I don't know if I can provide the kind of support that my child needs, all you can do really is all you can do. And as a district, we know that too. We will do whatever is possible to help kids. But we also recognize that this is a unique moment in time where separation and teaching online is going to limit us to a certain degree. So when we hit that wall, then let's collaborate, let's stay communicating with the parent, and let's be honest about what we're trying to do, what we can do, and what we can't do. And I think that's what we owe to parents in general. Ms. McClure?
There are 2 questions I want to get to. There have been parents that have asked that maybe online related services, occupational therapy, physical therapy, things like that, were not successful in the Zoom world, and their children just couldn't get that. If you feel that you need help from us accessing that in a virtual world, you'll let me know. There is also a way to pause those services as we are virtual, and then to pick them back up when we're brick and mortar. That is absolutely something we can do. There's just a little unique process that takes effect, and that's what you can call me for, and I can let you know. If you need to pause a service, or you feel that you really want to really focus on academic instruction and not have your child pulled for anything in addition, there are absolutely ways around that and language we can add to that IEP, because things, as we move back to brick and mortar, those are things that we're going to be putting into place. One other question was, will the children of complex learners or IEPs, if we move back to a hybrid model of 2 days a week, come more than 2 days a week? That really is going to be something we have to assess. Health and safety reasons are why we're not in right now, and those health and safety reasons will also play a factor in whether we can bring back all of our students in a hybrid model, and in addition, some of our highly complex learners more days than others. And that is a decision that right now I will continue to work with Dr. Steinhoff, Mr. Kaminka, and my supervisors on planning for that as we move through this period of time from now till October 9th. I know myself, many directors in Delaware County, and many superintendents, we will be assessing numbers and data daily, weekly, and really looking at optimal times to bring those kids back and how we do that. So I'll end a little bit tonight, unless there's some really pressing questions, is how can I get my child ready for virtual learning? Whew, I don't know. What I would tell you is I find that the more we can embrace it, the more the children will embrace it. And it's okay to tell them it's hard. It's okay to tell them that this is not the funnest way to learn. But the best they can do is the best they can do. Maybe phrase that and put it in a positive. I don't like it, I want to go back to school. Hey, why don't you start to list some things that might make virtual learning better? You know what, when I get in there and I meet my teacher virtually, I have some good ideas for her. So, you know, have them brainstorming and taking those negative thoughts about how hard this is going to be and replace them with some positive ways to have them think about how they make it better and more interesting and more engaging. That is the best advice I can give to a parent. Is we have never done this before. I don't have a playbook on how to do this the best way. I think I'll use Dr. Steinhoff's term, we're trying to land this plane the best way we can on September 8th and continue to build and make it better. I know that March instruction was not great. I feel like by the time we hit June, it was better. And we're gonna build and continue to build. The special education department had the luxury of really dabbling in virtual learning and live instruction during ESY. And we found it to be very successful for a lot of the children. And we're gonna continue to build on that. And I will leave you with knowing that our emails and phone extensions are available on the website. They will also be posted at the end of this PowerPoint presentation. And if anyone needs to be reaching out to us and asking individual questions, or you have individual concerns, please don't hesitate to shoot us an email so that we can get them addressed. Tonight is Tuesday. I hope to have, the PowerPoint will be up right away, and I hope that I will have the questions and answers to all of your questions up by the end of the week, hopefully by Thursday. And I want to thank everybody for your time and your patience and your continued support, because I can see that many of the parents are in support of really trusting us that we're going to figure out how to make this work the best we can. And I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. Dr. Steinhoff, you want to take us home?
No, no, I echo that as well. Thank you very much. Just recognize we're here for you. We understand that we're going to encounter some issues that we just didn't foresee. We'll get through it together. We'll get through it together. We know the challenges that you have at home, working with students sometimes who don't learn as well in this environment. We get it. We understand it. We don't want it to be any extra stress for any parent that they need to have at this point in time. So email us, call. We may need a little time to get back to you, but we'll try to get that answer. And if you don't get an answer, just try again. You're not being rude. Just say, hey, I emailed you. I really need an answer here. And we will try to get that. Finally, I'll just mention this too. We didn't have our teachers on tonight or our paraeducators. They are the best. We have just really incredibly gifted special education teachers and paraeducators as well. They've been getting training. They'll get more. You know, it's the summertime right now. Some of them have been involved in professional development throughout the summer. They can't wait to get back and work with your kids. They really can't. We've got awesome teachers here, and I just wanted to assure you that they're looking forward to this challenge. You know, challenge accepted is the approach that they're taking, and they're going to help as they can. And hopefully, you know, we can get this virus to die down, and we can get kids back in school. That's our goal. We'll keep our fingers crossed. And thank everybody for participating tonight. I noticed someone had mentioned maybe having something similar as a follow-up once this gets started. So I will make a note of that, and we'll try to hold a similar session in the middle of September, where once we have this thing going, we can come back and maybe deal with some more of the details once you actually see how it looks. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Have a good night.